Hello, everybody. My name is Thomas. I'm the head of implementations for Strusoft Impact software, and I'm here to present you the second part of our webinar series, which is with respect to the sandwich wall. If you remember in the first part, before, let's say in the middle of the summer vacation, the 15th of July, we were talking about the sandwich wall and how we can detail where are the errors are coming from, what can we improve, how can we improve the workflow, how everything is connected. And today, we are going to look into the other part of the business, which is, of course, what are the issues are coming from incorrect planning or correct planning, and things that they happen in the factory, and how we can, of course, prevent all these issues by using Impact. Yeah, I'm very happy that I'm going to present you this webinar. This webinar hopefully is not going to be a long webinar. It's just an overview. As I said also in the previous webinar, it's just an overview of things and tweaks that we can do in order to adjust and how to use planning software correctly. Of course, this is going to be by using the Impact software. And yeah, I hope you are all are back, or most of you are back from the vacation now, and you're ready for the rest of the year. And I am. So let's get into it. So I have made a small little presentation where I'm going to explain to you a little bit, for example, what are the most common issues, let's say, where the production gets delayed, even when the planning looks right? So a lot of times we don't, and when I say we don't, I mean like everybody, we do planning. I'm also a project manager, right? So we take into account things that they are not maybe reflect in real life, and some constraints that they can always come into delays into into our schedules. It is very important, especially for me when I work and planning things. I have to work in the same database, in the same data with the other people. If, and I have seen that many times, right? If we are working through different spreadsheets or different data from different data sets to different people, then of course, when we're handling a lot of data, then it would be fairly impossible to keep track of all the changes, and changes are happening all all the time. And also, the whole thing is by keeping track of the data is that we can also keep track of the delays. We can see what causes the delays, why a disorder or an issue or a rejection happen, right? When we keep track of this and we have the same data set for all the users, then it will be very easy for us um, to be able to keep track of these things and also correct them for the future, right? Maybe a bed has an issue, maybe something is not fixed correctly on a table, and that causes the issues 3 times in a row. So then we identify that, and we know, we address it to the management, and then we can fix it and move forward, right? So this graph here for me is very important, and I'm going to spend 1 minute on it just for you to understand that working in the same database is not the only prerequisite. The other prerequisite, of course, is that when we work in the same database, and we have different roles inside the company. Right now, I'm going to be the person who's both going to do the project planning and the production planning and the transfer planning and the quality planning and all the quality assurance controls. And I was also the detailer in the previous webinar, right? But of course, it's difficult to bring you 10 people here and do this connectivity. I think we've done it one time where we, of course, work in the same database. We reflect the changes and how this reflects in real time to all the people in the company. But what I want to say is that we all play a small part into what we call the efficiency thing. So if the project manager does the job in 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 his way and puts it into the system, while the detailer does his own job and set the element ready for production and so on and so forth, and the dates are set correctly and the information are set correctly, then we make the life of the production planner easier, we make the life of the transport manager easier, and also we make the life of everybody in the factory easier because they have a production planner who has control over his or hers production. So this is what I want to say, and this is what this graph reflects to. It's basically my favorite graph in the whole schemes of graphs that I have worked with before, and it reflects and it says to us that if everybody scans the QR code and does the job that he has to do, like I can see the transport planning, right, or the transport manager that gets the information about transport. And if we set the dates correctly as project managers and we follow up on the project, then it is fairly impossible to make those delays and errors. Of course, we'll try to do some things today and reflect to how this looks generally also when we do make mistakes. Handling change and connecting back. Again, whatever I just explained to you right now is basically what we say here. Modifications applied to everybody. Everybody gets notified through the same database, and of course we have this built-in, let's say, information. No useless emails, no threads, no anything. Just everything working through nodes and database and notifications coming in the from the software, which will in the end also apply to maximizing also your capacity in the factory and all these type of things in many ways. That's also, of course, we're going to look at today. Yes, so today I'm going to show you a little of not only how I do things. This is not where I'm going to focus on how to press the button or how easy it is to do these things, but I'm also going to discuss about why and how this reflects to your company and why it will make your life easier in the grand scheme of things, right? So I will go a little bit of all the features, like one by one. I will first be the project planner. I will do some date planning, some sequencing, and then I have already pre-defined my building. And then I will also play a little bit with the cash planner so you can see that it is fairly impossible, or how you can maximize your capacity, or it is kind of fairly impossible to make mistakes. What happens when we have disorders? What happens when we have a rejection in the system, right? And then how do modifications happen? And then, of course, let's say I'm also going to show you in the stack planning and how we can also gain information by using the 3D stack planner, especially for sandwich walls today. But of course, all this knowledge here, you can also apply it for any type of element. The sandwich walls are the most complicated, let's say, of elements that exist out there, that they are most commonly used. And I think it's a great example. If we can solve the issues for the sandwich walls, then of course you understand that it will be very easy to adjust those information to my holocore also, and the beams and columns, which are fairly easier and more easy to handle when it comes to production planning, right? So yeah, this is it for me. I know I speak a lot, so let's get into it. I'm not so much into presentations, but as promised, I have finished the model here to look a little bit more good compared to the first webinar, of course. And now I have my 4 floors, have made my elements, and the elements look okay with their end caps and the connections up and down, the end caps that we called, right, and windows and everything looks pretty much. Every element has its own information. So what we want to look into here, it's not so much about the complexity. I don't want to go through everything. What I want to tell you here is that, for example, what I have done now is that we have this building, we have this model, right? And the first thing we have to do is always try to improve the data. What we talk about improving the data, this is one project. I'm the project manager of this project. So what I can do here, there are multiple things. I can look at the cranes, I can add this erection sequence, I can make this into different construction phases, which I have already done. And when I say different construction phases, I have made 12 construction phases here, 3 per floor. And when we talk about information for me as a project manager, I can look into it and can see the different phases, and I can see the different colors, and I can see what element goes to what construction phase. This has already been said, so we don't have to do this now, right? It's very, very easy to do in the system. Another way of looking at this, of course, would be to have the erection sequence. I have not predefined the erection sequence, and I can very quickly do it for one floor. So we can also see that adding the erection sequence is very, very easy. So we can add the elements here, and I will select them in a specific way, and then I will just go like that. I will say add elements, and then of course I can say apply. So now my elements have gotten also an erection sequence. This is also color coding. Generally, as software, you should always look into how can I identify things and how I can identify quickly what's happening during my setup, right? So here, for example, I can look into the erection. I can see that all the elements here have an erection sequence. If I look in the grand scheme of the whole building, I can see that the rest of the elements, they have not yet been set in erection sequence. The whole point here we answer is, why do I set the erection sequence? The elements here, they look fancy, they look the openings, but they are data. They are a 3D model that you can use with your colleagues and with your external partners, and you can do this. But in theory, I want this element is basically length with height. It's an element type. It's a product. It has windows. It has openings. It has holes. It has casting materials, and it has, of course, a drawing. And now I want this to be planned the most efficient way, the way that I want it to be done. Um, how do you call it? As quick and as fast as possible, right? So what I'm going to do now is, of course, look into those elements. Let's take the first floor, for example, and I'm going to look it as a piece of data. And a piece of data here, when it comes to the project manager, is like a person who, let's say, has done this. How do you call it now? I'm sorry, I'm stuck. Let's say, but is basically an element mark, an element ID in the system that has, planned dates, and of course it has information about the dimensions of these, right? And here, because when I did the erection planning, the element was actually set a plant erection date, which reflected automatically to the different days, to the different dependencies, we call it in the system, of when this should get a drawing date, when this should get a storage date, when it should get a delivery date, and of course, in theory, where it should get a plant production date. In my case here, for example, I have an extra identification factor, which is the phase, right? So if I want to say that my first construction phase will require that those elements, and I will show you very quickly my phase, let's say it's here, right? And all these, they have like 3 phases. So now I have them planned by erection sequence, and then I also have them by phase here. So all the elements that are attached to phase 1, then you can come here and you can say, for example, that those are going to have a plant production date or a plant erection date. It doesn't really matter. But in our case here, we can just planning, we can set the date to be, and we will change that because it will also reflect the data into the system, right? And I can say here, for example, that I can have all of them in the, let's say, Monday, the 17th of August, say apply. And then I will continue with phase number 2 to be on the planning, set date, let's say the 18th, apply. And then we will do the rest on planning, set date on the 19th. So 3 days in a row, I have set those elements to, and I will apply, and the dates will also reflect to the changes that we just did, right? So all the dates now, they are set for these elements. And of course, this is just the first floor. We will be able to do the same for the second floor. We can here, it will be a little bit easier because here you can just continue with the faces again, right? We don't have now erection sequence, but we have the face. So we can say the elements that they are on phase 4, they will get a plant erection date planning, set date again, and that should be, let's say, let's start from the 7th of September, say apply, and then the 8th of September for phase 5. Set date, the 8th, and then of course the 9th of September, the last one. So basically what I'm doing here is I'm doing a little bit of project planning, right? I will say set date and the 9th. Of course, so we get enough data. This is important, so we can actually see the elements here. Now the elements have, again, as in the first floor, now we can see the whole building. Some of them, they have some of the elements, they have a planned production date, and some of them they don't, right? So of course, because we didn't do the whole building yet. So now we have here all the dates relevant that are relevant to my production planner. And according to this planning, and because I did my job now and I have set some erection sequence, of course, you need to do the whole thing, but it will get too much time and it will start becoming a little bit boring seeing that, because it doesn't handle of how to do things here. It handles, if you want to see that, of course, you can look into our other webinars. It handles mostly how to adjust things, how to make changes, and how those changes reflect on our elements, right? So basically here, this is a proposed date. This is a dependency. I have said that by the 18th, 17th, 19th of August, I want those elements to be produced. Now it's up to the production planner to say, are those elements having drawing approved? No, yet, not yet. The status in my model is not, and if you see here, the status is the most important thing. They are not ready for production. They are all status 0, right? And that's because I have not set them ready for production. But a production planner will check that, and the production planner will go and say, okay, um, this is important. Why? Because the drawing is finished, so now I can plan it for production, or I can set it to start being produced. Yeah, and that's how this works. Again, this is just one model. This is just one project, and for me, it's important to show you. For example, I will try to say, for example, phase and phase 1. These are all the elements that they are placed on phase 1, and the dates behind them are the 17th of August. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to go to my CAS planning, and I'm going to find the 17th of August. Yes, and I will say, and now this has been reflected, and this is basically my flow, right? I have those tables. I don't have to use all the tables right now. I can use only this part, 1, 3, and 4, just so we can see what happens, right? And again, how to do the CAS planning, it is not relevant right now, right? We can do it many different ways. I can just take the elements and say multicast, and then I will just start. And the software will, of course, place the elements from smaller to bigger in this turn. And I don't know if it's visible here, but maybe in the next day, I have also gotten 2 elements. There is always the calendar view where we can see things a little bit better. Of course, I need to find the correct week for me to get this reflection. So you see here the elements coming from my projects. They filled out the bed on the 17th, those tables. I have left 4.358 with a spare 500 in between. And now, for example, that I'm on the CAS planner, now I can show you very, very good example of how I can actually manage my space now with what I'm having here, with what I'm looking at, right? So here we go and we will take some sandwich walls from phase number 2. Let's say, let's find phase number 2. It's right here. And then I will go here. And now I'm not anymore in a plant, let's say in a planning zone, but I am on my actual cast planning. So here I need more information, and this is some presets we have made. And here I can see, for example, the length, and of course the width is the same, so they are all the same type for me here to make my life a little bit easier. And I can look into this and I can say I have 4, 3, 5, 8. Which one of those walls here can be set in here? Of course, none of the big ones can be set. But what if I told you that for now the shattering that I have is 500, right? And for me, it can also be 300. So what can we do here actually is you can select the table and you can just adjust immediately this to 300. Say okay. Yeah. And now the space between is 5, 1, 58. And what do you need? You need 300 from here. And that will mean that any of those walls, in theory, if I select this wall, for example, I can take it and I can plan it here. And hopefully it will be planned. And the new distance will be 500. Of course, this is easily fixed. If we want it to look the same, then we go and we write 300 again, right? And then we are at this space where we just basically gained an element from this by just doing that. And in the same manner, we can also, look at the smaller gaps here and see, okay, is that relevant to me? Can I actually take an element here? We can also look at every element separately, and also we can adjust this information about the element dimension lines, for example, and we can also see that around the element and see how big it is and how much space we have left. With the information that we get from the database, it is very, very easy to do things like that. And that's what I want to tell you. The easiest thing for me would be, of course, to now select all the elements and go in and just plan them and then do it like that. I will finish the first floor just for the sake of it, so we can see that the whole floor. And I will go to all faces. Let's update the model quickly, so we can see all the elements. So we don't have any filtering options anymore. Yes. Now I have this wall here. I have all the walls here, and of course I will just select them all. And it doesn't really matter where I do it, but I will just take only these 3 beds and do the cast planning for here, multicast. And of course, even though they are filled out here, the elements will fill out in the previous state. This will not get affected, but what is going to get affected is that it's going to get elements filled out in the rest of the days, right? So I'm gonna get these days out, and next day plan as quickly as possible or as best way as possible. But still, you see here I have my space, and I can also have space here, so I can actually fit 2 elements into these things, right? So what happens now that the day has come, and this is the day, and I have produced my elements, right? And then it's actually nice to be able to see it in a 2-day, let's say 1, 3, and 4, and let's see 2 or 3 days ahead, right? So that would be really good here, because you will be able to see how these things work, right? So this table, we do the controls, everything is done, and then we adjust and we say set status to produced. Needless to say, you will notice here immediately, as a project planner, as a project manager myself, I notice immediately the color change on the elements, which means that they are already produced and they um, they are already moved to the next stage. And the next stage is, of course, to do the control after production and so on and so forth. While doing the controls, this element or any element of those, we recognize that there is an issue with it, right? And usually, what I always like to show is that I would like to create, let's say, a disorder. In order to do that, it would be easier for me to to go and, because here, for example, I can reject it, but before rejecting it, I want to actually go to the calendar, find this element, and actually create a disorder on it. Usually, this will not happen through the project manager. This is way easier. Every element has its own QR code. Every element has its own tab, and then we can, of course, scan it, open the drawing, open the information, and create a disorder from there. It is difficult for me to show you that in a webinar, connecting my phone and team viewers and all these kind of things, but of course, it is very, very possible. So I will go to my disorders here, and I will create a new one. And then, of course, you can write the description. This is there is a crack. There is a crack. Please review, right? And you can assign it to one of your colleagues in your database, and you can set a deadline, and you can also say it's, of course, a disorder and give it a name, right? And then you can create. You say okay, and there is an active disorder here. The person you will send to can get notified. You can also immediately create an email directly from it, and you can also add recipients for the people so they can get both notification in the database, but also an email. If you still like to using the emails, as I said, it should be not so relevant. So we say, okay, we close it now, and we have this open active disorder. Those disorders now, we keep track of them. This disorder, for example, it has categories, right? And of course, I didn't show you, but we can say here it is because of production, transport, and then there are many different categories that you can use and reasons that you can keep track of. And then you can also use as to your advantage and figure out why this element produced on table 1 on position 4, why did it get rejected? Because maybe a week from now, the same another element gets also rejected, and that would be crazy. So we say okay, right? And we go and we do this disorder. Then our colleague gets notified. We figure out that this element, of course, is not salvageable anymore. So what we can do, and it's easier to show you from here, then we can see it from here that I can take this element and I can actually replan it, and I can reject it, reject element, and then I can also replan it to the next day on table 1 on the 19th. If there is space, which is here in my case, because you can write the reasons, the sub-reasons, everything you need to keep track of, and you can just reject it and move it to the day. And as you can see, it will automatically create a double element only on the CAS planner. We will keep track of it, and this element here will be um, lose its status of produced, will go back to be a plant. The new element will be connected to this, but in my production, I will have this produced element with the custom materials, with the information, with the reinforcement, with everything that I have done in order for me to keep track of the concrete, the material that I lost, and also have a graph and a view of all, let's say, the rejections I had in my database. Yes. So there are many more ways to look into this. One of it is, of course, that that you can do multiple things here. This is just the disorders and the rejections and a little bit how they work and how you can modify things. You can, of course, if you decide that, if you go back to the calendar view, for example, and you decide that you want to keep this table and you want to move the whole thing ahead, then it is very, very easy. The great part of it, is that everybody, everybody gets the same view when you are at the same time in the calendar, right? So usually people will not use the project manager to do the planning. They will use what we call, because this is where the question comes, and it's like, Thomas, okay, but now you're showing me one project. How can I plan multiple projects, right? And what happens when I have multiple projects and I have multiple things happening? And of course, this is where the other part of the software, the resource manager, which is this software here, comes into place. And this is where basically the people who are working uh, in the factory will use. This is basically the front face of the database when it comes to rejections, disorders, and so on and so forth. So if we look here into rejections, for example, in the database, and I go up to October, and I press refresh, then you see here, this is from the project we just made. This is all the rejections that I have. This is everything that I have, and the red ones are the ones who are still active, and the deadline has passed. The yellow ones, the ones that I need to be taken care of, and of course we have the green ones that they are resolved, and so on and so forth. So there is a lot of information here, and the planning usually will happen for multiple projects. Like in this case, I will take my dates a little bit before. I will put a little bit more time. Usually this timeline here is a couple of weeks ahead. It's not so big because because um, I don't produce any elements, right? So please excuse me for that I put such a big deadline. But here we should look at 2 weeks ahead, 3 weeks ahead, right? At every time, all the elements, doesn't matter which project are coming from, 60 from this and 30 from this, that they have this. The different element types we can also filter out, so we can see that they are all sandwich walls, and then we can select those elements according to their dimensions and according to the information we have set up here. We can take those and put them on our tables. Of course, when I refresh my table here, you will see that when I go to the correct date again, you will see that whatever I have done, whatever has been done in here, every replan, every information I have done, it is the same in this calendar. So everybody who has access to the cash planner or the information will be able to do this. And again, this is just how do we keep track and how do we change things and how everything is interconnected in the database. Everything is reflected into statuses for me to review as a project manager. The project planner, the production planner gets the information that needs from the project planner to do the planning. And in the same way, I have also, set up delivery dates, right? That they are relevant for the plant erection date, which is agreed with the customer, which all of these things together, they give me also information about the transport modes. I want to address one more question because I find it very relevant, and this is also because a lot of times I have this question, especially when it comes to modifications and things, is how do I keep the same mold for elements that are similar, right? Because I want to save not only capacity, but I also want to save my money. I want to keep the mold for 3 times in a row, right? And in my case here, I can just say floor 2, and then let's say floor 3. And as you can see here, it is not something that it is, but I have 3 elements here, for example, that they are the absolute same element, right? And I want to plan them day by day. So what I can do here is basically, let's take a clean week and select this table, right? And then I can just take those and just say specific number, because per element is just like 1, right? So I can only have 1. And then I can also say cast time and days 1. and then say start. And that will keep the the elements, the same mold on the same position in the table. Let's go here. You see the same mold on the same position in the table, and then I still have the space to go inside and select, for example, element number 2, element number 3, and element number 4, and then place them also. Of course, because those are different floors, of course, it might be more important for you to go by floor rather than keeping the mold because you have a lot of projects and a lot of stuff. But I'm just saying here that it is important to know that if you have a building with repetition and you want to throw out all the cladding panels because they are difficult, because the mold is difficult, and you want to throw them out in this way, then that is also very much possible. And then you can fill, by actually doing the exact same way, you can fill out the rest of the positions with the rest of these, so you can keep consistency for the next 3 days. Again, a lot of different things that they can save you, that they can help you when it comes to capacity, and also they can save you the time and the information. Again, I want to focus on the information when it comes to the elements. And the last thing maybe I would say here is the same way that we did this. Sometimes, for example, we have very elements that they need curing for more than one time, right? And that's also very easily possible to fix by just selecting this empty table or any table, and then you can just say that the cast time of days is basically 2, is not 1, right? And then if we do it like that, then we will see that my capacity, my table for the next day is blocked. So everybody can get informed, everybody can see that the table gets blocked when it comes to my no, I have put it in a table that it is not visible right now, I guess. So I will activate that also, so you can see here that we have an element. The last part of this webinar is of course the transport planning, which again there also, by having this stack planning when it comes to stacking. I will go back into my first floor so you can see it a little bit better. When it comes to stack planning, for example, I can actually take my walls of let's say the walls of phase 1 again. I'll try to do it like that again. So the walls of half of the walls, like we can take all of them. That's matter. Take the walls of phase 1, and we'll just try to put them in. And then I have this A-frame sandwich and say okay. And that will automatically make the 3 different stacks here. The stacks stop at the position that I want them to be stopped, meaning that either the max mass is reached or the let's say the max element is reached. You see here, also very important to notice that the walls are sitting in the position correctly. In this case here, I got lucky here. I don't know. Usually I'm not that lucky, but in a situation, for example, like that, you can also, take those walls and say, for example, merge stack layer. Of course, maybe they fall a little bit out now because my frame is too big, but then you can take this and this and say merge stack layer. And that will also give you the possibility of, for example, let's say take a phase number 2. Let's take a small element, maybe this one, and this one, maybe it can also be fit here because I have not maybe reached the whole mass. I have reached the maximum elements, of course. This is how I set it, but you can always, for example, take this and put it into your stack here. It can also add to your space and help you do these things. Being able to do this and with the correct dates, because now we have the dates, we have the delivery dates, everything is preset, adding them on a transport, setting them out in the factory, then it will again it would be such a great advantage inside. So everybody communicating, everybody making sure that everything works together, and then the information are being shared and your sandwich walls are being handled properly. inside the Impact database. There are a lot of things here. I know I went from this and that to this and that, but again, I just wanted to show you maybe the workflow of using software. In our case, of course, it's Impact, right? But a workflow for using a software to also adjust changes, rejections, disorders, dates, and how all these things are handled, how things are moving on in the system, and how by communicating without having to communicate verbally, but communicating by adding the dates and the things inside your company, then everything is handled properly. Yes. I want to say that this is it for me. I think I spent more than enough of your time. I spoke a lot, so excuse me for that. This is just a small part of the software again. It's just an overview of some small changes and how we can use it, how you can use the software the most proper way. If you have questions, if you have anything more that you want to see, feel free to contact me. This is my this is my email and my information. You can also find me in the Strusoft webpage. And yeah, I want to wish you a very nice day. Thank you for joining me today. I hope I see you also in the following webinars we are planning. So thanks a lot. Have a great day, and I'll see you all soon. Bye bye.